Good morning. So the market is giving us some seriously mixed signals today. You've got stock futures pointing up, which is great, but at the same time, the geopolitical stage looks like it's set for a major showdown. To really get what's going on, we've got to break down three key stories that are driving everything right now.
Okay, first up, you have the White House coming out and saying a major conflict is basically over. But here's the catch. The other side, they're completely denying it and are flat out calling it market manipulation.
Then, we've got this massive trade deal between the US and the EU. I mean, two of the biggest economic players on the planet, and the whole thing is hanging by a thread. It all comes down to a single vote that's happening tomorrow.
And finally, a real earthquake is shaking up the tech world. There's this startling new theory about AI that has just vaporized over $500 billion in market value. All right, let's dive in.
So let's start with this whole puzzle around the Iran conflict. We have this official war is over statement, but the market's reaction seems to be totally ignoring the fact that the other side says no, it's not. So what gives? Why is the market rallying on a piece that only one side seems to recognize?
So on Monday, President Trump came out and essentially declared victory, saying all the military objectives have been met. Now, the timing here is absolutely critical. This statement came right after a 5-day diplomatic pause was announced. And he's basically framing that pause not as a negotiation, but as the very last step before the U.S. heads for the exit.
Well, Tehran's response was, let's just say, immediate and blunt. A military spokesperson didn't mince words at all, calling it an attempt to manipulate markets and public opinion. Then their foreign ministry jumped in, making it crystal clear. There are no talks, no negotiations, and absolutely no back-channel communications happening, period.
So here we are. You've got two completely different versions of reality. The White House is saying the war is over. Iran is saying it absolutely is not. Which begs the question, if nobody can agree on the facts on the ground, why are oil prices dropping and stocks pointing up?
Here's how the market is thinking about this. Traders aren't betting on Iran actually agreeing to some peace deal. No, they're betting on President Trump simply acting like there is one. See, the logic goes something like this. If Trump says mission accomplished, then U.S. air support gets pulled out, and without that support, the campaign just isn't sustainable. That means the risk to all that oil shipping through the Strait of Hormuz goes way down, and that right there is the whole bet.
And this whole thing is on a really tight deadline. That 5-day clock started ticking on Sunday, and it runs out this Saturday. We're right smack in the middle of it. This is why the countries trying to broker a deal, like Egypt and Turkey, are so important right now. Any little hint of progress from them could move the oil markets in a second.
Okay, moving on to our second story. Tomorrow, the European Parliament is holding a vote that could basically blow up the huge EU-US trade deal.
The original deal that was agreed on last July looks pretty straightforward. The EU gets rid of all its tariffs on U.S. industrial goods, and in exchange, the U.S. puts a 15% tariff on European products. The Trade Committee already gave it the green light, so you'd think this would just be a simple rubber stamp, right?
Well, it's not that simple, so what's the catch? What's the hidden landmine in tomorrow's vote?
It all comes down to this one little detail called the amendment clause. And EU lawmakers were pretty clever here. They slipped this in. It forces the U.S. to confirm in writing that it still honors the original deal from July. Why? Because since that deal was agreed to, the Trump administration has rolled out new tariffs under something called Section 122. So Brussels is worried these new tariffs could just cancel out the whole deal, and they want to guarantee that's not going to happen.
So this sets us up for three very different outcomes. First, the best-case scenario. The deal passes, the U.S. accepts the amendment, and we see tariffs start to de-escalate. Second, the deal passes, but the U.S. rejects the amendment. That's chaos because now nobody agrees on what the deal even is. And third, the vote just fails completely, which would basically mean we're right back to a full-blown tariff war.
All right, let's pivot to our last story for today. Because while everyone's watching geopolitics, something huge is happening just under the surface in the tech world. And it was all kicked off by a single research note. I want you to just look at this number for a second. $611 billion. That's not a typo. That is the staggering amount of value that's been erased from the software sector in just this week alone. So what on earth caused this? It's a research note from a firm called Citrini, and they've outlined a thesis they call the human intelligence displacement spiral. The idea is actually pretty simple and kind of brutal. As companies start replacing human knowledge workers with AI, they don't just save money on salaries, they also cancel all the software licenses that those employees used to use. And the impact has been, well, Brutal. Just look at IBM. It had its worst single day in 25 years, falling 13%. And it's not just IBM. Salesforce, SAP, all the big names in enterprise software took a massive hit. This is forcing the entire market to completely rethink how it values the whole software as a service industry.
Okay, let's pull all of this together into a clear plan. With these three massive stories all happening at once, what are the specific signals you need to be watching for today?
Here are the three key things. First, keep your ears open for any diplomatic whispers from those ceasefire brokers, like Egypt or Turkey. Any hint that they're talking to Tehran is going to move the oil market. Second, all eyes are on the U.S. Trade Rep's office. Are they going to say something about that EU amendment, or will there be silence? Because remember, silence is a signal too. And third, you're going to want to watch Paychex earnings. Their data on hiring is going to be our first real-world test of that AI displacement theory.
So that leaves us with three major points of tension. We've got a diplomatic deadline that's up in just 3 days, a massive trade vote happening tomorrow, and a key payroll data print coming out this morning. A deadline, a vote, and a data print. Which trigger is going to get pulled first?